Man claims to have found the wreckage of Malaysian Airlines MH370. The mysterious disappearance of Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 in 2014 has been an enduring question. So far, there are little to no answers to what happened to the aircraft. There were an extensive multinational air and sea investigation that took place after the plane had vanished from the radars. These efforts were claimed to be the most significant recovery efforts ever made. But unlucky, the shots were all in vain. To this day, no one knows what happened. But now, one amateur investigator from Australia claims to have found the wreckage of the flight and says that the plane had a bad end of the long-lost passenger jet. In the early hours of the morning of March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 with route to Beijing took off from Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The flight list had 227 passengers and 12 crew members, including Captain Ahmad Zahari. As all crew members, Zahari was a Malaysian national. He'd been flying for the airline since 1981 when he first joined the company ranks as a cadet. The expected duration of the flight was about 5 hours and 24 minutes. However, we're still waiting for the aircraft to touch land. Before the catastrophic flight, Zahari had an admirable flying record of 18,365 hours. He was not only a well-qualified pilot, but he was also a flying instructor and examiner. There was no one better to pilot that flight. Alongside him in the cockpit was the first officer, Farik Abdul Hamid, who was 27 years old. He had also joined the company as a cadet back in 2007, and during his time on the company, he had accumulated 2,763 flying hours. Flying this Boeing 777-200 to Beijing would be the last part of Farik's training in operating this model. We know that both pilots were very well qualified for the flight, and although Farik had little experience with this model of plane, that didn't suppose a risk, as Zahari was a very seasoned pilot and had plenty of experience. The plane itself, the Boeing 777-200, was first introduced to the market back in 1995 and has an outstanding safety record. Only a 0.4% of these manufactured planes had ever crashed or had any critical incidents. These numbers actually compared very well with other types of passenger jets. Boeing produced 1,412 units of this model, and so far only 6 had been pulled because of fires, crashes, or attacks. Among these 6 planes, there's another fateful Malaysian Airlines plane, the flight MH17, which was shot down by pro-Russian rebels in Ukraine on July 17, 2014, with anti-aircraft missiles. The loss of both flights was a hard hit for Malaysia Airlines that in less than 6 months had lost 2 planes and almost 550 passengers. The Boeing 777-200 of flight MH370 had only 12 years operating, and it had gone under a comprehensive maintenance check only a month before the tragic flight. At 12:42 a.m. local time, the plane took off without signs of problems with the aircraft. Zahari took the plane to 18,000 feet, looking for a navigational waypoint, while he waited for clearance to increase altitude to 35,000 feet, which came at 1:01 a.m. 7 minutes later, the plane had reached its goal altitude. At 1:09 a.m. was received Captain Zahari's last message. The Lumpur radio operative signed off. Malaysia 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night. Captain Zahari confirmed, good night Malaysia 370. Even though that message is the last human communication, the last received signal of the aircraft was picked up by Ho Chi Minh Radar Center 1 or 2 minutes after the message. Still, the plane was holding an altitude of 35,000. Suddenly, the plane had disappeared from commercial flight radars in Kuala Lumpur and Vietnam at the same time. Although it had disappeared from commercial flights radar, it could still be detected by force radars. It was noticed by these radars that the plane had taken a right and then a left turn away from its course. At 2:22 a.m., the flight had vanished entirely from military radars, and at that moment, the flight was at an altitude of 29,500 feet. The automated satellite communication system built into the plane continued to operate for a while, but also ceased to work. The flight was scheduled to land in Beijing at 5:06 a.m. However, it never reached its destination. It wasn't until 7:24 in the morning that the news about the disappearance of the flight was made public. Soon enough, the international media was giving coverage to the news. Military and civilian search parties were deployed, and investigators got busy. As time passed, 2 weeks after the aircraft's vanishing, Malaysia's Prime Minister gave a press conference that he said that the plane's last known position was over the southern Indian Ocean, but with no land in the vicinity, the only logical explanation was that the craft had fallen into the sea. As months passed and there were no answers to what happened to flight MH370, speculation started to grow all around the world. Different theories appeared trying to explain the mysterious disappearance from the craft. Some were more plausible than others. One of the assumptions that grew bigger was that the pilot of the flight was responsible for a murder-suicide. Other theories included that the plane had been hijacked or that it had been shot down. Very soon these theories came to nothing, as there just wasn't any evidence to support them. By the time the investigation was called off, only a few pieces of wreckage had drifted ashore, but there was no sign of the full body of the aircraft. Now, after over 4 years of the incident, a man is claiming to have found the remnants of the aircraft using Google Earth. Peter McMahon, an Australian engineer and amateur aviation crash investigator. According to his statement, he said that he'd found the aircraft to the north of Mauritius in the Indian Ocean and said that the fuselage of the craft seemed to have bullet holes as if attacked by another aircraft. However, the specialist has said that the images sent by McMahon were captured by the satellites in 2009, 4 years before the incident, and declined his theory that the plane had been shot down. Hopefully, many more people with theories will come forward and maybe someone will find the truth.